You're sitting in my station using my equipment. Is there a reason for this, or to save time, should I just go ahead and snap your hands off at the wrist?
If you enter my mind for any reason, I will twist your head off and use it for a chamber pot.
You have transmissions holding.
Patch incoming signal. Full audio and video decode.
Purple files accessed.
What you are about to see has never been shown to anyone outside the Great Council.
Hello, everyone out there in podcast land. Welcome to Grey 17, a Babylon 5 podcast, and we are here for a very special bonus episode with a very special guest. We want to welcome the one, the only, Claudia Christian to the show, and we're so excited to have you here, and thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So just to jump in, and I have to say, Scott and I planned this show out and talked about this, 3-4 years ago when we were working on another podcast. And we got this idea to, have a few of us that have watched the show many, many, many times and get a group of our friends to join in and watch for the first time. And neither one of us would have guessed then, let alone, when we were watching this show, when it first aired, that we would ever have the chance to do this today and have you for an interview. So thank you for the time and for talking with us and answering some questions for our newbies and for us.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Thank you for saying that.
So just a quick rundown of what we are here. So we've got, as Blake mentioned, a group of newbies as well as longtime fans. Blake, Kevin, and I watched back in the 90s, but the rest of these folks here, Emily, Jessi, John, Andrew, and Nicole, just started watching for the first time back in July. So they are almost done with the first 22 episodes. And
you're going to have a lot more to digest. Yeah.
That's why I keep telling them. I'm like, we're almost to season 2. Hold on, guys. Hold on.
Yes, I would, for my own personal self, my own experiences, and you'll see the transition of the character. Ivanova was extremely uptight in season 1 because she was obviously the youngest lieutenant commander ever to be stationed there, and also because she was brand new. And so you have to take that into consideration, that she was really trying to, mind her P's and Q's and stay straight and be extremely officious and all that. And the nice thing is, throughout the seasons, you'll see that she quite literally and metaphorically takes her hair down and relaxes into the character. I used to say it was season 1, I had a pole up my ass. and season 2, you started to see a modicum of humor. Season 3 and 4, you really saw the true Ivanova come out.
We have definitely had conversations already about when Ivanova has her hair down and when she does not. So I'm going to kick it over to one of our newbies, Nicole, for the first question.
Hi, nice to meet you. Thanks for the time today.
Sure, Nicole. How are you?
Good. Totally unrelated. You have great hair, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I just had to say it. Had to. So I'm a total newbie. I've never watched B5. I've never watched sci-fi, really. So this is all brand new to me. And like you said, I've noticed the progression as the season has gone on, how Ivanova is starting to let her hair down, like you said. And one of the things I love so much about the Ivanova character is that, she's bold, she's strong, she's not afraid to step up to a challenge or challenge the men on the station. So my question for you is, we really didn't see those kind of characters in females in the 90s. I was a teenager in the 90s, and I remember watching all sorts of different shows, but I've never really remember like a strong, bold female. So how did that feel like to play that? Was it challenging? Was it fun? Especially in that era when it was so male dominated, with those leading characters, like what was that like? It had to be quite an experience.
Well, I was raised with 3 older brothers, so I was, I was used to that testosterone being around me. So when it came to Michael O'Hare and Jerry Doyle and Bruce and all the rest of the boys on the set, I fit right in. And I think that the reason why it's kind of funny because you'd think it was far more nuanced than this, but one of the main reasons why they recast Tamlyn Tomito is because she was too petite to come across as authoritative.
Mhm.
And because I have a deep voice and I'm tall, I could certainly, first of all, there wouldn't be that height difference between O'Hare and Tamlyn was like very short. So they wanted somebody with a taller stature. And I think one of the reasons why they cast me is just because I have that sort of tomboy kind of thing. I did, back then especially. But I also think that it was important to retain Ivanova's femininity once she was off work. And I think it was really important to be in touch with so many aspects of her personality. I mean, people joke and say, oh, you're typecast as a bisexual Russian telepathic commander in space. But the thing is, in the 90s, they didn't have the exploration of bisexual characters. They were not made into a deal. Like it wasn't,
Right.
And, I remember I was friends with Terry Farrell, and in Deep Space Nine, they made a huge issue of, them kissing, it was like, Joe didn't do that. He just presumed that in the future, it doesn't even deserve a mention that she's with a woman and then she's with a man. And then, she mentions an ex-boyfriend, that people were fluid, and it much like Rome, it just didn't matter. Nobody made a point of saying, oh, she's gay. So I think that was part of the really interesting thing about her. And I think the sort of push me, pull me aspect of her religion, there weren't any actively Jewish characters. I mean, I think they had, they sort of suggested that Leonard Nimoy was Jewish in real life, but there weren't a lot of classically Jewish characters in sci-fi as well. So there were many aspects to Ivanova that were unique, not just that she was a strong woman, or that she spoke back to the men or told the commander or captain what to do. I think that it's just that Joe didn't see it, much like he didn't see gayness as a thing. He didn't see femaleness as a thing when it came down to doing a job. And that's why he gave her the backstory of being the best student, the youngest lieutenant commander, somebody who's so on the straight and narrow and so good at her job that it's at the expense of her personal life. And so that also shows that human fallibility of, if you don't devote yourself to your career in that much so, and it's that much of a focus, then what do you lose?
Right.
The potential of a happiness. So I think all of those themes come into play when it comes to Ivanova. For me, she was miraculous to play because I could touch upon everything. Once Joe gave me permission, I did beg him to give her a sense of humor. Eventually, I got to listen up, and that was great because I'm kind of the class clown, and everybody was cutting up on the set, and so that was refreshing when she finally just loosened up a little bit. But I think it was also just a joy to not be constantly about your looks. The uniform and flat boots and my ponytail and not a lot of makeup, and which thrilled me to death because I don't like being, touched up a lot. All the stuff that goes into, and it's funny because now I'm playing the captain of the LAPD on 911, and it's like ponytail, very little makeup, nobody touches me, it's hair helmet. So it's funny how these jobs keep going through. But when you've got the really sex pot jobs, it's like, oh God, the hairspray and all the crap and false eyelashes, So it was a joy to play her, to answer your question in an extremely long-winded way.
It's okay. I loved it. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm going to pass you over to Jessi.
Okay.
Hi, Ms. Christian. It's so nice to be able to meet with you today.
Thank you. Call me Claudia or Claude or something.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm one of the noobs. I am somebody who took a few episodes to warm up to Ivanova's character, and it's really good to hear that she just continues to get better. Because we just watched TKO. What was the next one we watched?
The Voice in the Wilderness.
Yeah, so we're almost done, and I am absolutely in love with Ivanova's character at this point, which everybody makes a joke of because I was adamant in the beginning that I was not going to like her. So it's so amazing to have been able to get to where I'm at, and now we're interviewing you. It's the coolest thing. I guess my question is, what similarities did you notice between yourself and Ivanova's character?
Well, there were built-in similarities in the fact that I'm not Russian, but I'm German. I'm first generation, and that's the same sort of the Teutonic work ethic and all of that, and having parents that were immigrants, certainly gave me that similarity with Ivanova. The sarcasm and the deadpan delivery is not really me. I'm more of lots of little voices and I'm more of a out there comic as opposed to a snarky comic. But the sensitivity, there was a lot of things we had in common. I lost a brother, she lost a brother. Joe picked that up, and I told him that I wore something from my brother, and then he gave me that thing of wearing one earring. There was a lot of holding in of feelings, obviously, because I'm hypersensitive as a human being. So there's always that modicum of control that you try to have when, so it's for when Ivanova breaks down, it means more to me because she has so much of a wall up. And that was really a joy to play somebody who was so reserved, but felt so deeply. I mean, she truly, I don't want to view any, really give any spoilers to you, but the subsequent relationships that you'll run into, these are people she cared deeply for, but it was so difficult for her to love them. And so I think you'll see throughout her journey is that she's highly, highly sensitive, as I am, and yet had to have this veneer of being professional and being in this situation of giving orders and things at a very, very young age. You have to remember, I was in my 20s when I went there. And I was also brand new to the set that had already been established on the pilot. So much like Ivanova, Claudia went in there, and O'Hare had already done the pilot, and Jerry Doyle had already done the pilot, Mira and Andreas and Peter. So they had a family already. And Richard Biggs and I were the ones that were the replacements for the doctor and for the lieutenant commander. So Biggsy and I had a bond, and then the rest of the characters had already been there. So there's something about being a newbie, both in real life and in the show, that certainly I had in common. But yeah, there's a lot of similarities because Joe Straczynski observed us. You have to remember that we shot Babylon 5 in a very sequestered environment. We were in an old hot tub factory in a place called Sun Valley, California. And they had converted that into a soundstage. Normally, when you do series, like I did series at Warner Brothers or Universal, and you would have lots of other shows. So when you work on Columbo or Quantum Leap, suddenly you run into other actors from other shows, and you go to the same commissary and you eat together, and you see lots of other people. We were alone. We had post-production, wardrobe, accounting, the business. Joe Straczynski was just an office away from the set. So, all the producers had offices. So we were literally this commune. So there was a definite, there was a flashlight on each and every one of us because we'd eat lunch together. There was no place to go. We were in the middle of nowhere. So yeah, we had our little rooms where we could disappear to and have some privacy, but the majority of the time we were all together, and especially when we ate. So Joe was watching us. So you wonder why Andreas Katsoulis has certain things as Jakar. It's because Joe watched him by himself, smoking his cigarettes, the pensiveness, the thoughtfulness, and they watched me goofing around, pinching Jerry Doyle's butt, kicking, punching out, Bruce, constantly, we were just a playful group. And so eventually he incorporated some of our own personal characteristics into the characters.
That is so awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I'm going to pass you to Andrew.
Hi, Claudia. It's great to be able to meet you. So as Jessi sort of touched on, for some of us, our feelings on Ivanova has changed just throughout the first season. So no spoilers because us first timers are only at the end of season 1. But while you were on the show, how did your own feelings about Ivanova as a character change over time?
Well, I started to really, really enjoy her. I'll try not to say spoilers, but there's a part in a certain season where I felt relegated to sort of parking cars for a while. And that didn't fill me with much joy. But then Joe ended up giving me a little bit more humor and one particularly dramatic scene that kind of made up for that shitty period. So, I mean, she became more like me, so it was easier to play. I'm not an uptight person, and I'm not a boring person. And in the first season, she seemed to be a little bit of both. So, you know, I think she changed in a positive way for me to be able to play her, more positive way. Does that answer your question? Sort of.
That's awesome. All right, so yeah, it did. So now I'm going to pass you on to your number 1 fan, John.
Hello, Claudia. So unfortunately, I get to be the one who has not seen the light yet and has fallen in love with Ivanova's character yet, although it's warming, it's thawing. But I actually had a question not related to B5. So you have over 150 credits to your name, which is quite a lot of work. But is there one role or project that you were either up for or wanted that got away? And how do you think your performance would have changed that role?
Interesting question. I tested for Speed up against Sandra Bullock. That would have changed my career. I also tested for Basic Instinct. I was too young, which is funny because both of those blockbuster movies certainly would have changed my career. How would I have changed that role? I don't really know. I mean, I thought about that more with the film that I did get, because I was up for the Kathy Baker role in Clean and Sober, but I was too young again. So they gave me a smaller role to play Iris with Michael Keaton and Morgan Freeman. And I often think of how I would have played Kathy Baker's role, because it was far more meaty and more dramatic. So I could see myself in that. Unbeknownst to me, years later, I would struggle with my own substance use disorder, but that was sort of pre-addiction for me. So that film was kind of interesting. When I look back on it now, I think that I could have brought a lot to the Kathy Baker character in my 40s, you know, because I had seen that movie and been through that rodeo and henceforth found recovery. But I mean, that was definitely a role that I would have liked to play when I was older and had that experience, because I think I would have brought a lot of substance to it. But you know, it's interesting in life. You don't really know what paths are going to take you. My struggles ended up giving me the gift of a far more richer life, which is my nonprofit work and my advocacy. And I was telling my partner, I said, you know, yesterday I received, this is completely off topic, but yesterday I got no less than 5 messages from people saying, you saved my life. And I'm thinking to myself, how would I have ever received that sort of gift as an actress, just an actress? There are people that are Babylon 5 fans, for instance, who say, oh, you helped me come out of the closet, or you helped me embrace my Judaism, or you helped me whatever. And that meant a lot to me. But to come full circle in life and now have this work as something that is actually changing people's lives for the better, besides just being a role model, it's quite extraordinary. So to answer your question in a weird way, I think I could have done really, really well with any of the parts that I did not get, because I believe in my talent, but I also believe in the course of my life, and it took that route for a reason, so that I could come full circle and actually give back to society, because there was something always frivolous in my mind about living a life just as an actress. That's why I wrote books, and that's why I did other things. But then when I found my nonprofit work, I was like, aha, that makes me whole as a human being.
Well, it's quite an incredible answer. Thank you for that. And like I said, I'm warming up to the Ivanova character. So maybe if you come back after, we're at the end of season 1 at a sign.
Warmed up to her? Oh, wait till season 2. You'll start to see her humor. In season 3 and 4, I think you'll change your tune, baby.
Well, I'm excited, and I hope if you come back, then maybe we can check in. And after season 2, maybe I'll have my Ivanova shirt on and be, maybe in the fan club. So
better.
Well, I appreciate your time, and I'm going to hand you off to Emily and let her ask you a question.
Hi, thank you for being here. This is very exciting. So my question is, you did a lot of different parts before landing B5, and now you're doing a sci-fi project. So were you a sci-fi fan before taking on the Ivanova role?
No, I'm a Ricardian, a Richard III freak. I'm a history geek. I'm a ex-Renaissance fair goer. I'm a collector of edged weapons. I'm a Tudor expert. I am my bailiwick, my wheelhouse is medieval Europe and England. No, I'm not a futurist, not a sci-fi fan, wasn't raised with it. I've never felt of this time. I've always, I was writing with a Venetian crystal pen until I was 35 years old. And made my own ink, ground the colors, the whole bit. I used to work by candlelight. That's how truly medieval. Seriously. Never owned a new house, always, migrated towards old ones. So no, I didn't get into sci-fi until when I did The Hidden, which was sort of sci-fi. I consider that sort of horror. So that really wasn't sci-fi. Then I did one little episode of a series called Space Rangers, and I kind of ignored that as well. Then when I did Babylon 5, people started introducing me to really good sci-fi literature. So I had fans giving me books, and suddenly I was reading some pretty good stuff, but it still wasn't really my preference. And still to this day, it's not. I enjoy fantasy, some like, Game of Thrones, the original, not House of Dragons, and I certainly read some stuff as a kid. I read the Hobbit and things like that, but I never really, I just didn't get into it. I don't consider Babylon 5. I know this sounds really stupid, but you have to kind of grasp Babylon 5 to me is just really great storytelling. It doesn't matter what genre it is. It's beautifully written. The characters are evolved. They're fallible. They're interesting. They make mistakes. There's just themes that are timely and timeless. So to me, it's not like, oh, that was the sci-fi show I did. When I did the Doctor Who audiobook, playing Perry's mother, that was me working with Nicola Bryant, who's a dear friend. It wasn't me doing Doctor Who, that's a sci-fi show. It was just me playing a fun character. So I don't really look at genres the way other people do. I don't sequester myself into this theme. And when people, it's so funny because one of the main reasons why I was hoping that Babylon 5 would get rebooted is because I'm always referred to Claudia Christian, best known for. So I thought, well, at least do a reboot so it's up to date, It's like, God, you do get, I guess, within the fandom, you get typecast. But within casting directors and producers and directors in this town, I just did a film for a young director, and he had never even heard of Babylon 5. He liked me from something completely different, some obscure comedy thing I did. So in the industry, it's not as typecast as with the fandom. But for me, working in science fiction was kind of hilarious because of my love of history. And if you look at my bookshelves, for instance, it's just solid history. And you know, so that was kind of, I've come around to understanding the joy of it. But once again, I still think of Babylon 5 as just really good storytelling.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thrown in. And you know, it's funny because I write alternate universe stuff, but once again, I don't consider it sci-fi per se. I don't even though there's aliens and there's spacecraft, I don't know. I just I think of it as world building, as storytelling. No matter where it is, there's some basis in humanity. So I guess that's the way I view things.
Thank you so much. And the making your own ink sounds fascinating.
Yeah, it was really fun.
And now back to Scott.
Thank you.
Thank you to our newbies for asking these questions. We really appreciate it. And thank you, Claudia, for keeping them relatively spoiler-free. We appreciate that, too. We're going to...
Sorry, sorry about that.
No, you're good. You're good. As we say on the show, I'm going to kick them out the airlock now so we can talk about your current projects as well as maybe some other stuff as well, too. So to the newbies, thanks, everybody, and go ahead and say your goodbyes. Yep.
Bye. Thanks, Claudia.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Grey 17, a Babylon 5 podcast. You can find all the places to listen to this podcast and links to our social media accounts at anchor.fm/Grey17podcast. We want to hear from you, so please join the discussion on Facebook and Twitter. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Grey 17 is a part of the Front Row Network and NPR Illinois Community Voices. You can find all the Front Row shows at thefrontrownetwork.com. Grey 17 is not affiliated with, and this podcast has not been prepared, approved, or licensed by Warner Brothers or any other owners of the Babylon 5 copyright. All audio clips included in this podcast are the intellectual property of their respective copyright holders. They are included here for the purpose of review, and no infringement is intended. The opening and closing Babylon 5 themes are available from Falling Matter on YouTube.
And what's out there?
The rim.
And beyond that?
The truth.
So let's go ahead, Claudia, and talk about Dark Legacies and talk about how that project came about and everything else. I'm going to kick it to Kevin first.
Hi, Claudia. It's such a pleasure.
Thank you.
I was introduced to Babylon 5 in the early 2000s by Blake, actually, who was like, you have to watch this show. And I watched it all the way through, and it's become a favorite of mine.
Nice.
I'm so interested to hear about Dark Legacies. I know it encompasses comics and tabletop game and novellas and audio content. Is there a particular area of the creative development that you find particularly rewarding, or do you really like it all?
I think the most exciting thing for me is creating concepts with Chris and imagining the joining of universes. Three Musketeers with Lovecraft, that kind of thing, and thinking about how that would pan out, how that would work. We originally bonded over our love of Celtic mythology, so that really was, we just became friends and we started talking about things. And I don't really mind at all horror if it's done in an intelligent manner and not a gratuitous manner. And I noted that Chris's writing was really, really sharp in that regard. It was exciting gore, not frivolous, not just, it just read in a far more sophisticated way. So I was happy to jump in on that and to explore all these different themes that we both love. So I guess the most exciting part of this whole journey, it's certainly not the fundraising. That always makes me uncomfortable. The Kickstarter, I've been doing that for my grassroots nonprofit for 13 years now, so that's never a joy to me, and I so deeply appreciate the fan support. But that's usually the part that makes me uncomfortable, but it's a must having to do. And I don't think my particular talent lies in conceptualizing games. You know, I can put in my 2 cents. I have to tell you the truth. I was playing a role-playing game years and years ago, and when I went to this comic book store years and years ago, and they had a Babylon 5 role-playing game going, and these people had been there already for about 3 days, and I didn't get it. I didn't understand the whole concept of rolling, you know, of the little ships and moving them a little over here and over there. So that sort of thing definitely is not my, as they would say, my talent or expertise.
Thanks so much. I'm going to kick things over to Blake.
So again, and you know, Kevin jumped into the show. We've got another one of our friends who's on the newbie list now that, you know, didn't quite jump on in the early 2000s, but we've got him on in our newbies now. Unfortunately, wasn't able to be on today. But another thing just to comment on, you mentioned it in several of your responses, as a member of the LGBTQ community myself, you know, watching Babylon 5 as a show in the early 90s with the approach that Straczynski took to that portrayal and that character, you know, where it wasn't shrouded in some type of, you know, alien situation. It wasn't coded, but it was what it was. It wasn't drawn attention to, it was just accepted, and it was meant so much at that time from a show that, you know, in that particular era. So just to comment and thank you for even being part of that and the show for doing that.
I thought it was so elegantly done, and I thought it was so lovingly done, and it's the way it should have been done, as opposed to drawing attention just as if we just are who we are, and it's not a big deal. You know, and I so many young people have come to me throughout the years to say that really truly helped them come to terms and with coming out, or with understanding that it's just normal. You know, and feeling good about themselves, and that made me feel so honored to be able to play that character. And I think that Joe should be commended for many themes that he took on without doing it for the illicit thrill, or for the standing out, or like, oh look, we have a female on female kiss. You know, it wasn't anything about that. It was just about humans being human.
Yeah, that really comes through to the fandom for sure.
Yeah. I'm sorry that I said that spoiler, but what?
Oh no, you're fine. Jessi was already picking up on it.
Well, and I already let that one slip too accidentally in something I posted to the newbies also. So, but with your Dark Legacies project, you know, one of the things that interests me with it, and reading from the descriptions and looking at it, is the way it's set, taking place, you know, after the totalitarian government. Mm-hmm. You know, there's in sci-fi, we've seen that a lot, where you've got the dystopian future, you've got that, you know, dysfunctional government or the totalitarian government, or you've got the utopian future. You know, we don't see a lot that's set in this world of what happens after. So just kind of curious, you know, and especially hearing now that with your interest in history, how much that's played into helping build this world.
Well, I mean, I spent 10 years writing a book on a Rome that never fell, and instead expanded into the galaxies. With a lot of detriment to honor and peace and love between the humans that remain, because things still existed, such as slavery and things, you know, huge epic things that we simply can't say, oh, the world's a better place now. So I think that let's face it, Chris and I are both optimists. That's the thing. And so we didn't want to fall back into that dark, sort of pessimistic, it's been done to death. I think there's elements of everything that's been done to death. But to have a shred of hope, and at the end of every story that we've created, there's always hope, even if it's horror or if it's violent, there seems to be some sort of hope. And I think with Dark Legacies, that's what I insisted on, because I'm, like I said, I'm an optimist. I wanted to explore the idea that the reparations of what had occurred and how we learned from it, as opposed to simply starting new and making the same mistakes all over again. That's the thing in history, obviously, is that if you can't learn from the bad parts, then you haven't succeeded as a society. You haven't succeeded as a human being if we're not growing and learning from our mistakes. So I'm hoping that theme can be explored more, in the sense that people don't necessarily change overnight or have an aha moment, but you see them maybe taking those mistakes from the past and making reparations. And that's my hope for it. Nothing overtly, oh, we're going to save the world, hero kind of thing, or everything's going to be better now. I mean, that's just not real in any sense of the word. And there'll be a lot of people and characters that don't learn, that continue to make the same mistakes and persist the same thing. It's interesting. I was working on this audio drama I do, which has a ton of humor in it, but and you might think, well, it's kind of the same thing every episode. But I noticed that the characters are learning and they are changing, and we do throughout life as human beings. I mean, if you were mean to somebody as a child and you bullied somebody and you feel guilty, you either learn that hurts you as well, and maybe as an adult you tend to change your behavior so that you're more kind to people. Hopefully we learn from these things. And if your characters don't learn, and if your characters don't change, and if they don't grow, then it just doesn't feel right to me or real. And that's, I think, the biggest challenge of this, is to find a way of taking all that pain and starting fresh again with a new understanding of how to make a world a better place without being too hokey about it. Without being like, hey, everything's fine now. That's just not real. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. That's one of the ways in which Babylon 5 was so different and was so groundbreaking, is that, the characters did change over the run of the show. And that's one of the reasons that we like the show so much.
Yes, and what I loved about it is that they were fallible. They made mistakes. They had substance use disorders. They had anger issues. They had, they had relationship issues. Ivanova had an inability to let anybody in, and then was suffering for hurting Marcus and for, all of that pain. There was so much pain in all these characters. I mean, Jakar, come on, Londo, everybody was deeply, deeply wounded and carrying this weight. And yet some of them learned lessons, some didn't. There was also that bait and switch with a lot of characters, which is so interesting to me, which is something that I really love putting into stories, where you're rooting for somebody and they just don't learn their lesson, and they keep making the same mistakes, and they keep effing up, and they keep disappointing the reader and the viewer. That's the thing, is where you're just screaming at them going, why are you repeating the same thing? But think about it in our real life. Think about how many people keep choosing the wrong partner. They choose they have this idealistic viewpoint of, this is what I need in my life. And you as friends are all going, it's not what you need. She's wrong for you, or he's wrong for you, and they just don't see it. They keep dating the same person or marrying the same person. And that's their journey. That's their job, to learn eventually, to say, aha, oh, that's why I'm unhappy. Right. So I think that's another element that has to be employed into most of these, clearly a comic book with the Three Musketeers and Cthulhu might not be the environment to put all of these epic themes into, but I think we have an opportunity to world build in a way that we can also create characters that grow.
As we're chatting here, I am texting with Chris, who is sending me artwork from Three Musketeers versus Cthulhu, and he's like listing out all this other stuff that you all are working on. So I honestly don't know when you two sleep, which is
he never. I have to tell you that it's so funny because I was asking for timelines, and I know that the first issue of Dark Legacies is now at the printer, so that's going to go out to the Kickstarters, the people who supported the Kickstarting campaign, in like 3 to 4 weeks. Then the second one, I think, is going to be the Kickstarter starting in 2 weeks, I believe.
November 17th. He just told me that as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's a lot of dates coming very quickly. This seems to have been it seems to be moving very quickly, and I have to give Chris 100% of the credit of hustling with these companies, these gaming companies, and these, you know, I'm off making cheap, low budget films, and he's the one taking the meetings and charming everyone and really making things happen. You know, I just show up and answer questions and you know, throw my 2 peas into the pod and all that jazz. But he's the one who has the real context, and we're working with wonderful people like Stas Johnson and great artists, and you know, people are really coming on board that not only understand the projects, but I think have their own personal take on it, which is exciting to see. I love the artwork, by the way, from the Musketeers. The colors, Chris colored that himself, but the artwork was done by another gentleman, and it's just beautiful, beautiful.
So we've been bombarding you with questions for a while now, and I really appreciate you giving us the time on that. Is there stuff that you want to talk about or hit on that we haven't really chatted about yet, or anything you just want to throw out there about what you're working on, upcoming projects, or just, you know, want to vent about something?
No, I mean, I would say that, you know, it's always great to give a shout out to my amazing executive director, who will probably never listen to this podcast, but C3 Foundation wouldn't exist without Jenny Williamson. You know, we are a very small, when I say grassroots, it's 2 women, and we're desperately in need of a 3rd employee, but we just don't have the funds. So I always like to tell people, if they want to really make a change in the world of addiction, then visit c3foundation.org and become a hero. We've made a program where you can give as little as $5 a month, and it really makes a difference for us. You know, we are on a very, very tight budget, and we do a lot. We're the only nonprofit organization in the world that is dedicated to the Sinclair method. And I don't know if you all know about it, but it has a nearly 80% long-term success rate for alcohol use disorder. And I used it myself in 2009. And, you know, it saved my life. So I always try and use any platform I'm given to give a shout out to medication-assisted treatment and to give to small grassroots nonprofits, because we're trying to change the world and we need help.
I'm very touched. I had no idea, and I lost a sibling to alcohol addiction. So I'm so very touched by your work, and that's so wonderful that you have that in your life.
Sorry.
Oh,
See,
thank you.
This is what breaks my heart. This is what breaks my heart, is people say, and because I've been advocating since 2009, and I wrote my book in 2000. I started it in 2010. It came out in 2012. My documentary came out in 2014. My TED Talk came out in 2016. And people still say that they have a sibling or a parent or a friend who died and they didn't know about the Sinclair method. That's what kills me. That's
well, now
what
I do.
I know, but what I'm
no, you know, it may come up again. I hope it doesn't, but you know, maybe I can point someone in the right direction in the future. But you know, my brother, he just he didn't want to change. And it was sad, but he had so much family support. But it's so wonderful that you were able to affect so many people's lives through your work. That's so wonderful.
Thank you. Well, here's the thing also about this treatment is when people say they don't want to change, or I'm not going to quit drinking, you don't have to quit drinking. It's you don't give up the alcohol gives you up. And that's the beautiful thing, is that you just take a medication. So that is, somebody has to be motivated enough to take the medication. But other than that, I mean, it's life-changing, the differences I see in people, the difference I saw in myself immediately. And that's the thing is, you know, it can happen to anybody. It doesn't matter if you're smart or beautiful or successful or Nothing. I'm a complete disciplinarian. I mean, I am disciplined in my life. I am a hard worker. I have very high morals and ethics, and doesn't matter. Doesn't mean you're a bad person. Your brother wasn't a bad person. It's just, it's your brain changes. You know,
Right.
your neural pathways become engorged. And if you have nieces or nephews or younger relatives that have this genetic predisposition for it, I would make them aware of it too, because I've given this to recommended it to teenagers, and it's changed their life. You know, little teenagers that were binge drinking in college and things. It can work for anybody. I've actually given it to actors who are not alcoholics, but they were going through a rough time, and they like going through a divorce, and used it just to decrease their drinking, you know, just to cut down, because they felt like they were using alcohol too much to push down their emotions. So it works for a myriad of things, and I'm just blessed that I ran into it, because man, I tried everything. Everything. So I'm grateful, and I believe in giving back and shouting from the rooftops. If something works for you, then share it with the world. Yeah. Once again, I'm sorry about your brother.
Oh, thank you.
That's a rough one. Yeah. I lost my own brother when he was only 14, and it was a drunk driver too. So yeah. So it's they're always with us though. They're always with us.
There's one of the scenes that the newbies have seen is a scene in, besides, you know, TKO, where your character is grieving about your father. There's also a really great scene in the episode Eyes, where things seem to be coming to a head, and you're so your character's so afraid about being scanned, and it's a really great scene with you and Jerry Doyle in a hallway where he's kind of trying to calm your character down, and they've seen that, and they've really enjoyed seeing the progression, and I can't wait until they see the next season and the third season to see all those changes in your character, because they're just gonna love it.
Oh yeah, no, it's funny to see people watching it for the first time. And are they streaming it on HBO Max?
Yes.
Yeah.
For the most part, yeah.
It is. It's remarkable how many new young fans are coming from that. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, the community is. Oh, I'm sorry. The community is growing leaps and bounds. I think partly because of the pandemic and people had to find something to binge, but it's still continuing to grow as we continue to notice more and more people popping on.
Yeah, it's a pity about the whole CW thing. I don't know what's going to happen, but and it would be nice if I think HBO Max.
Hey, you know,
we can all hope.
We continue to quick refresh on JMS's Patreon, waiting to find out what's going to happen. Although there's another secret project that no one will tell what. I know.
We're not asking.
I was going to try to catch you. I knew it wasn't going to work, but there's another secret project. That's all I know.
I'm not allowed to say a word. My lips are sealed. I'm not going to get in trouble.
So
I can't say a darn thing about that, but yeah, he did say by the end of the month we'd hear something about the reboot, didn't he?
Yeah, he had said that next few weeks. So hopefully,
so that
fingers crossed.
That would be Monday, the 31st, would be the last day of the month. So, well, we'll see. Yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot of hope looking at what they're cutting and what their lineup is going to be, but stranger things have happened. One never knows.
The one thing I've noticed is when JMS has an idea, he doesn't let it not get out there. So if it doesn't turn into a show, which I hope it does, if it doesn't turn into a show, we'll see his idea somewhere, shape or form, I bet.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, apparently he wrote a beautiful script. No doubt he did. I mean, writers traditionally don't get worse in time, just like composers or actors, they become better. You know, I know I'm at the top of my game right now at 57, and you know, I can't imagine what he came up with for the new script. So it's exciting.
When you were mentioning that you don't always prefer to be, you know, all dolled up in a role, I just recently saw the episode of Quantum Leap that you were in,
Oh, yeah.
And
Now he's sewn into that dress. Like, down.
So yeah, the two different parts, very different, but certainly I've just enjoyed having seen a lot of your different roles over the years, but I have a special place in my heart for your B5 role for sure.
Yeah, Ivanova was definitely that whole experience was probably the best acting experience in my entire 40-year career, because the people were just extraordinary, and those who are left were still close. That's indicative of what the set was like. It was just a joy to go to work. I work on series now, and because of these things, there's no love, there's no sharing of ideas, there's no running of lines, there's no working on scenes, there's no talking about your family or getting to know each other, because everybody's on their damn phone. It's destroyed the culture of and the camaraderie and the relationships of actors. Truly, it really has. And that's not me exaggerating. It is profoundly different. And if you worked on a series in the 90s, chances are you're still friends with those people. And if you work on a series today, chances are you don't even know those people. And that's sad.
Yeah.
But I'm so grateful because, Pat Tallman is one of my best friends, and Bruce and I adore each other. Peter's just the most amazing human on this planet, and everybody. I just love everybody who's still around. And I miss those who aren't.
I keep looking forward to when Pat Tallman's going to join back onto the show, because I think she has a great little bit to play there too, and I think our newbies are going to enjoy that as well too. So we're looking forward to her joining back up.
She's my co-star in the Anne Mink stuff, the audio dramas that I was talking about. Yeah, she's my co-star. She plays Jean, my nemesis.
Yeah, I was actually going to comment on that, because you mentioned the closeness with the cast, and you've all still got relationships. We see on social media where you're posting with each other, and you've actually got some of the cast members involved in Dark Legacies, I believe.
Yes, Bruce Boxleitner. Well, we're doing the Western themed comic book, and Peter has agreed to be in the project as well. So, yeah. In fact, he did a very funny video talking about it. Very funny cameo video that I think Chris posted or is going to post. Yeah, they're both lovely. Bruce and I have been wanting to work together for quite some time on a project that I rewrote for him. It's a Western, kind of a Western family movie based on the White Buffalo legacy that I've been trying to make for about 150 years. But Bruce really wants to play the lead, and I want him to, because he would be so magnificent in it. He's a really good actor, and he's just a genuinely nice man. So I have nothing but nice things to say about all of my co-stars. The only time we had difficulty with somebody, we'd suck them out of an airlock. So
I am going to take that clip and use it later. Thank you. Well, I'll tell you what, we'll be knocking on Mr. Boxleitner's door here as soon as I can announce he's in the show to the newbies, although Kevin likes to slip it every now and then that he's going to come in here. But sooner or later, the newbies will have him in there too, and I'll be knocking on his door.
It'll get a little easier to keep the newbies from spoilers pretty soon. After
I think they'll like Bruce.
Oh yeah.
He brings a different energy. And it's really quite remarkable to watch his transition over the years from this sort of hey to this dark. Well, I was like he aged like he's like a U.S. president. It's like he became this gravitas. Now it's so funny because now that he's off the show, he's back to the howdy doody.
Well, but if you watch the Orville, he's the president of the galaxy, so it all works out.
I know. I've been up to that show like 3 or 4 times. It's quite remarkable. Why the heck haven't they cast me yet?
Well, start smacking Seth MacFarlane on the head or something. Well, we're running out of time here, Claudia. Right. I really do appreciate you taking time to be with us. I hope we can do it again, because as the newbies get to learn about your character more, and also as you continue to expand this franchise, universe, whatever you want to call it. I think there's going to be a lot more to hit on as well too. But we really do appreciate the time you're giving to us. We thank you a lot.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend, and thanks for having me on the show.
We have one question for you, if you could, real quick, and that is John, who you just met, does not know how to pronounce your character's
and
name.
Justin,
Justin, who you have not met.
Doesn't know how to pronounce Ivanova?
Yeah, they keep saying Ivanova.
Well, it's here's the funny thing is Susan Ivanova is not a Jewish name. It's a Christian name. And so that was a kind of funny thing about the character. Ivanova is how the Americans said it. Ivanova is how Russians say it, Ivanova. Ivanova is not right from any shape or form, but if you want to call her Ivanova, they can. But it's Ivanova. If you say it properly, Ivanova. Dushenka Maya.
There we go. There we go.
Like Klavda, Ivanova. Yeah. But that's okay. Mispronunciation is fine.
We'll definitely use that to help them along their way.
I want that clip of mispronunciation is fine, because the amount of people that have commented on the mispronunciation.
That's
in
true.
Our social media.
That's true.
A lot of people say Ivanova. My mother still says Ivanova. So, it doesn't really matter. But Ivanova, 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 it doesn't matter. It's all the same.
Thank you so much. We'll leave you be, but we appreciate your time, and I really, the other guys have said it too, but from an early age, I grew up watching your work, and I really do appreciate, and I just told our newbies this in a side chat, that it's wonderful when somebody you have followed for most of your life not only meets your expectations, but exceeds them. And you have done that in spades. So I really do appreciate you for being an amazing person, and thank you for taking the time with us.
Oh, thank you. You have a beautiful weekend, and thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Very much.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
If I live through this job without completely losing my mind, it will be a miracle of biblical proportions.
Well, there goes my faith in the Almighty.